The next Bitcoin halving is set to take place in the spring of 2028. And I think the trajectory of this asset is really going to surprise people over the next few years. In this video, we're going to talk about my 2028 price prediction in respect to the next halving, and I really think this is going to surprise a lot of people. I think the trajectory and momentum that we're going to have going into the next Bitcoin halving is really going to turn a lot of heads. We're going to talk about that all in this video, but before we get started, welcome back to the channel. My name's Doc. Throughout the day, I'm a resident physician, and at night, I take you guys on my crypto and investing journey. It might seem like the next Bitcoin halving is kind of a ways off, right? But these type of things have a tendency to sneak up on people. With the next Bitcoin halving, it might seem like, oh my gosh, over 1,100 days away till the next Bitcoin halving. The way that I like to think of this is it's about 3 years, right? The next Bitcoin halving, and it's kind of an estimate, right? Because it depends how fast we're mining blocks, but it's slated for March or April of 2028. So I'm filming this in the first half of 2025. So I know we are a little bit ways away, but I think the hype really starts to build back up after, about a year before the next halving. So we're 1,100 days away. This might seem like a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's really, really important to realize where the price is going to go. And we're going to talk about that. So stay towards the end of the video because I'm going to give you guys my 2028 price prediction. I think it's really important to kind of take a look back and realize why the Bitcoin halving is so important. So in 2019, to secure the blockchain, folks are mining Bitcoin, right? And they used to be rewarded 50 Bitcoin per block. Now, since that, it has halved every 4 years, hence the name, the halving, right? So kind of crazy to think 16-ish years ago, we're getting 50 Bitcoin per block to secure it. So it halves every year. Right now, we're mining 3.125 Bitcoin per block. And that comes out to 450 new Bitcoin that are added to the circulation every block that is mined. Well, in the spring of 2028, that is set to half to approximately 1.5 Bitcoin mined per block, right? Miners are rewarded by securing the network, and because of that, they receive Bitcoin. So obviously the mining rewards get cut in half, and that is in essence some of the reason why we can expect an increased price prediction, right? It's the whole supply and demand thing. The supply, the rate at which we're adding new Bitcoin is drastically reducing. So I made this little chart here, and I think this is really telling, right? Yes, there has been more halvings since 2016, but the market, in my opinion, became a little bit more predictable with these halving schedules. A lot of folks say these first two halving schedules in this first part here, they're kind of like combined in some ways, but I really like, here we can see July 2016, we had our halving, and right here you can see we went from 25 Bitcoin mined per block to 12.5, and that correlates right here. And if you zoom in, we can kind of see there's a pretty significant price prediction, right? Now, this is a log chart, by the way, so we went from roughly, and I'm not getting the exact numbers, but roughly $500 per Bitcoin all the way up to approximately $20,000. Then after every peak, there tends to be a pullback. And then the following halving in May of 2020, the price was approximately, and it really depends, how granular you want to get here. We had a pretty significant event here in 2020, as I'm sure folks know, but it went from a couple $1,000s all the way up to $69,000 in November. So we had that April peak, which was $63,000, and then we peaked again in November, right around $69,000. And here you can see we just had a halving in April 2024. So I'm filming this video in the first half of 2025, and at this halving, we were approximately, in the 60s, right? We actually hit a new all-time high before this halving, so that was like pretty exciting. We got up to roughly 73,000 before the halving, and that was kind of the first time that's happened, right? New all-time highs before the halving. And as I'm filming this, we're in the low 80s. We hit that peak of 109, and personally, I do not think we hit the cycle all-time high. I think we're just having a little bit of a pullback, but the question then becomes, where are we with the following halving in April 2028? And that's really the subject of this video. Like, where are we going to be at the next halving, which occurs in approximately 3 years? So I really, really liked this Reddit post, and it's kind of long, but I'm just going to break it down and give you the simplified version. So right now we have a little under 20 million Bitcoin in circulation. It's about 19.7-ish, 19.7, 19.8. That's how many Bitcoin are in circulation. Now there's only 21 million Bitcoin, right? And the interesting thing is in 2026, so next year, we will have mined 20 million Bitcoin, okay? So that means only 1 million Bitcoin will be left to be mined. The really interesting thing is in 2028, we reach Epoch 6. And at that time, and again, this is approximate because the mining times change, the mining rewards, at the next Bitcoin halving, it is projected that 20.3 million Bitcoin will be mined. And what that really means, roughly 650 million Bitcoin will be mined between 2028 and 2140, right? So that's crazy, right? Approximately 115 years and 600,000 Bitcoin is going to be mined. The big stat that I think is wild. So we're saying the next Bitcoin halving in 2028, there'll be approximately 650 Bitcoin left to be mined over 100 years. The wild thing is, of that 650, 330,000 will be mined between 2028 to 2032. So you can see how this gets really scarce really fast, right? In 2028, 20.3 million Bitcoin are going to be in circulation. There's not going to be left. We are not going to have enough time to mine all of this Bitcoin, right? There is not enough Bitcoin for everyone. And I really like this chart. I actually stole this chart from Invest Answers. Great YouTube channel. I'm in his premium Discord, Patreon. Really, really good guy. A lot of good knowledge. So we're saying right now, 3.125 Bitcoin are mined per block, right? And that comes out to 450 Bitcoin per day. And in 2028, that's going to get cut in half, right? 1.56 Bitcoin are going to be mined per block, and that comes to 225 Bitcoin per day. Things really start to get gnarly in 2032. And guys, that's not that far away, right? That's 7-ish years, depending on when you're watching this, away. And at that point, less than 0.8 Bitcoin will be mined per block, right? That means 110 Bitcoin per day will be mined, which is absolutely gnarly. So we are going to go over my price prediction here in a second, and I'm going to tell you my bearish case, my base case, and my bullish case. But the interesting thing is, after we go through my price prediction, I'm going to kind of build up how we got there, right? And there is a ton of wild predictions out there, right? This one, for example, is by Plan B. And he's saying that, and I don't necessarily know if I agree with this. This is kind of this is a very bullish case, right? But he's saying that we could get up to $1 million per Bitcoin this cycle, right, in 2025, only for us to fall back down to 500,000 Bitcoin in 2026, and then hit a quote unquote market bottom of 200,000 per Bitcoin. Now, he talks about this in this video. We're not going to play it because it's a pretty long video. I respect Plan B. I think he was really great in creating the stock to flow model in regards to Bitcoin. But here you can see he's saying that there's roughly a $500,000 price target between 2024 and 2028. Now, in the video, he says there's some pretty big variability here. This could go anywhere from 250,000 all the way up to a million, right? And this is a very, I kind of want to say a famous tweet by Benjamin Cohen. I respect Dr. Benjamin Cohen, right? He has a PhD. And the interesting thing is this tweet has been bookmarked almost as much as it's been liked. So he specifically in the comments, because people try to dunk on him, he specifically says, like, I didn't mention anything about Bitcoin halvings, but I really thought this was interesting. He kind of nailed these first three, and he said in 2023 and 2024, we are going to hit $100,000, right? And then he says later part of 2025 into 2026 is going to be a bear market with an accumulation happening at the next halving, right? And the interesting thing is he says Bitcoin, he's a little bit more of a conservative price prediction. He says 2040 to 2042, Bitcoin will be at $1 million, right? We're going to go over this chart because I really, really like this chart in just a second. But before that, we are going to go over my 2028 Bitcoin halving price prediction. So my bearish case, this is if Bitcoin really starts to fall apart. You know, we don't have the price prediction and the adoption that we really had. So at the time of filming this, the all-time high for Bitcoin is $109,000. And this would really say that, hey, if this $180,000 price prediction were to hold true, I think what this would really mean is that the ETFs really stopped buying Bitcoin. Nation states like El Salvador stopped accepting Bitcoin as legal tender, right? For some reason, I would imagine if we're at $180,000 in 2028, somehow the Bitcoin strategic reserve got dismantled. I really don't think this is going to be the case, right? I think here in 2025, we could hit this $180,000. But I wanted to put this as my bearish case just to put it on people's radars. Now, obviously, this isn't financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Your boy does not have a crystal ball. This is just my price prediction. So my bearish case for 2028 as we're going into the next halving, and we can kind of see, guys, there has been run up in price before the halvings in the past, right? Here you can see in 2014 going into 2015, there was a price appreciation. And don't let this chart fool you because this is a log chart. This was a pretty significant increase here. We had the same thing kind of happening here before the halving in 2020. And then again, really had that in the most recent halving going into April 2024. We had some significant price action, right? And the interesting thing is Plan B says that the market really starts to get frothy approximately a year before the halving. And this chart, it makes sense. It holds true, right? About a year before we see this positive price action before the Bitcoin halvings. So something to keep in mind. So my bearish price prediction for Bitcoin in 2028 is $180,000. What's my base case? What do I think is most likely? I think we're right around $300,000 at the 2028 price prediction. And I actually feel like I'm kind of sandbagging this price prediction in a lot of ways. And we're going to build my thesis out here in just a second as to why I think that is my base case. But I think with a $300,000 price prediction, that's approximately a 3x from where we are right now. The other thing that I should mention is this is my 2028 halving prediction. So it doesn't mean that the price can't increase from there as well, because we do see price appreciation typically in Q4 of the post-halving year, right? So something to think about there. Now, what's my bullish case, right? What is my peak euphoria? Bitcoin's being adopted everywhere. The United States is buying Bitcoin in an aggressive manner, right? I think Senator Cynthia Lummis is proposing that we buy approximately 200,000 Bitcoin per year with a total of approximately 1 million Bitcoin, or 5% of the total supply. So if we get adoption like that, the ETFs continue to buy in an aggressive manner. Retirement funds are adopting a 3, 4, 5% Bitcoin allocation. You get some of these lifelong ETFs or IRAs, retirement plans that are putting a couple percent in. That would really lead to my bullish case scenario. And what I will say is a lot of folks are already doing this. I know the Wisconsin Fire Union, they're adopting Bitcoin in their retirement funds. So if all of these things happen, I think we could be over $500,000 by 2028. And again, I kind of think this is a little bit of a sandbagged bullish prediction. Again, a lot of things really need to line up for us to hit that price, but I do think this is very doable. Like, I think this is very much in the cards. Now, you're going to see some people, Plan B being one of them, and again, I really respect Plan B. You're going to see him saying, we could hit $1 million before then. Possibly, I think he really is going far out on the risk curve with that. But now I kind of want to talk to you why I think Bitcoin could hit over $500,000 by the 2028 Bitcoin halving. So I really, really like this chart by Brett_ETH. Great guy. I'm actually going to give him a follow on Bitcoin. So he kind of breaks down the chart into this, halving to peak phase, right? So that's after the Bitcoin halving, how Bitcoin then a price appreciates. So you can see here in May 2020, that's when the Bitcoin was of the last cycle, we were, approximately right below $10,000. And then we peaked all the way up to $69,000, only to have a drawdown and then this accumulation phase. So he's saying on his chart, this cycle, we could potentially get up to $210,000, $220,000, only to then draw down below $70,000, right? So go all the way up to 220. That's this cycle. And then for us to pull back, below 70, and then we have this next accumulation zone. So kind of interesting, right? Like, what could happen there? Well, I really like this ROI market cycle bottom indicator. Now, this is on Into the Cryptoverse. Ironically, this is Benjamin Cohen's website, right? So if we look at this is really, really good. This shows how many X's Bitcoin has done from the previous bottom. So let's just look at market cycle 3, right? This was the 2017 to 2018 cycle. And from the very, very bottom to the top, and again, I'm talking when Bitcoin bottomed, this was wild. This did over 100x. Now, last cycle, it was obviously much lower, right? It was roughly a 20x. And again, I'm talking from the very, very bottom, the Pico bottom, up to the top, right? The Pico bottom right here, all the way up to the top. So it's tough. And we see each cycle has these diminishing returns. Right now, we're roughly a 6 or 7x, right? And that kind of makes sense, right? The bottom this cycle was roughly $16,000 or $17,000. That's when the bank crisis happened and there was a bank run. One of the San Francisco banks closed. So Bitcoin hit roughly a $16,000 or $17,000 Bitcoin, and then we went all the way up to $109,000. Well, we're seeing diminishing returns each time. My thesis is, what if we had a 5x return from the Bitcoin bottom? Well, here we can see, and I tend to agree with this, the Bitcoin bottom for this next bull cycle is roughly $60,000 to $70,000, right? And you cannot split hairs here, right? Because we're talking in really long timelines, right? We're talking over a decade time here, from going all the way back to 2017 and now trying to predict to 2028, right? It's just that. It's a prediction. So if Bitcoin, let's just say, were to hit $60,000 at a low this cycle, well, roughly a 5x from there would be right around $300,000, right? And that's why that's my base case, right? If Bitcoin hits a low this cycle of roughly 60,000 and we have roughly a 5x from the bottom, that's how we get to 300,000. Now, what if it goes lower? Like, what happens? You say, hey, Doc, well, what if Bitcoin falls down to, say 40,000? if we multiply that by 5, does that mean the base case is 200,000? Well, I don't think it's that black and white, right? Because we said this could be roughly a 5x. What if it's a 5.5x from the bottom, right? What happens if it's a 6x from the bottom, right? This cycle we've seen about at its highest almost a 7x from the bottom, right? And I'm saying that a 7x because that assumes that $109,000 was the peak for this cycle. Personally, I don't think it was. I think the peak is yet to come, right? I really, really do believe that. So if you think $109,000 wasn't the peak, the interesting thing is, let's just say, for example, Bitcoin hits 160,000 this year. Well, that means the ROI from peak to bottom would be roughly a 10, right? Because Bitcoin was 160,000. It got up, or excuse me, it was 16,000. It got up to 160. That's roughly a 10x. And that would still be in line with the diminishing returns theory, right? Because we had over 100x 2 cycles ago, roughly a 20x last cycle. So would it be unheard of if we had a 10x this cycle? I don't think it would be. So there's a couple take homes with this. A, Bitcoin demand is going to continue to go up, right? From now until the next cycle, the Bitcoin demand is going to continue to go up, right? There's more ETFs that are adopting Bitcoin, right? The MicroStrategy has been adopted into big ETFs as well. So there's going to be this constant buying pressure. It's becoming more and more well known. Bitcoin is slowly becoming digital gold. It's being more widely adopted. So I really think the demand is going to continue to increase. And then we just showed with the halving cycle that the supply is going to continue to decrease, right? Because the amount of Bitcoin that's added to the circulation each year keeps going down. And this is kind of wild to think about, right? Like the next halving in 2028, 20.3 million Bitcoin will have been mined. There's only 21 million Bitcoin, right? So then we say at 2032, 20.6 Bitcoin will have been mined, leaving roughly 300 to 400,000 Bitcoin to be mined between 2032 and like 2021-40. So kind of wild. Here's what I want to know, right? This is my base case for 2028 is 300,000, and we can still go up after the halving, right? So I want to know, what is your guys' price predictions? I read literally all of the comments, and I'm genuinely curious, right? Like, this is just a prediction. I want to know your guys' prediction, because that's how we get better. We can legitimately learn from each other here. So if you guys got any value out of this, hit the like button, consider subscribing, turn on notifications so YouTube feeds more content like this to you, and I'll see you guys on my next video.